You're leaving money on the table if you're not adapting your sales approach to match your prospect's personality style. Every person that you're ever going to meet and sell to has a distinct personality type that determines how they make buying decisions and what motivates them. Today, I'm going to show you how to exactly identify and then sell to each of these personality styles using a proven system that I've used to generate hundreds of millions of dollars across multiple industries. Harvard's medical psychology department has identified that there are 4 primary personality types. And when you know how to identify a person's dominant style and their type, you can instantly connect and guide them through the sales process in a way that feels natural and familiar to them. Now, what makes this so effective is because everyone expresses themselves in one of these 4 certain ways. And when you can understand the pattern, you can adapt your approach in a way that makes your prospect feel relaxed, they settle in, and they open up to you in ways that they wouldn't typically do in a sales conversation. Now, maybe this sounds like psychobabble or that, it would be really complicated. But here's what's really powerful. You already know all of this. You actually use it, but you're just not using it consciously. You're using it at kind of a subconscious level. We call this like being an unconscious competent, meaning you're doing the right thing to do, but you're not even familiar or aware that you're doing it. So you fail to be able to kind of leverage it. But if you'll stick with me, just give me 3 or 4 minutes, and I guarantee that you won't be able to stop watching this video. So let me give you the first of these 4 types and some identifiable characteristics and patterns that you will instantly recognize. And then I'll share with you what's not being said, but actually controls and motivates their decision making. First, we have what we call the driver personality style. You know them as being very direct, right? These are the type that want to get right down to business, right? They don't want to hear about the labor pains. Show me the baby, right? They don't want to make small talk. They hate getting into the weeds of the details. They want the big picture and they want the bottom line. They're very quick to make decisions. They might start a meeting by saying, how much are we talking about here? What's it going to cost me? Right from the beginning. Even before you have a chance to settle in or try to establish rapport, they want to know what's the bottom line, what's this going to cost, where are we going? And it often feels like maybe they're bullying you or maybe they're ambushing the conversation. But if you can understand that this is just their style, and if you know that going into your meeting, you can better become their best friend, a trusted advisor, because you'll be able to really quickly give them the most important information right up front from the very start. See, when I owned my cleaning business and I knew I was meeting with a driver type personality style, I put the pricing page right at the front of the proposal. Right after the cover page, boom, there was the price. Before any of the scope of the work for the proposal. And then I'd say something that was almost like music to their ears. I would hand them a red pen and say, Jim, as you can see, we have this price at $4,000 a month. Now, as I quickly walk you through the top of the waves from the scope of work, just use this pen to redline anything you want to change, and that will give you control over the final number. Fair enough? I would watch them light up. They would lean into the process. I could see their wheels turning as they thought to themselves, I'm in control here. I'm in the driver's seat. I want you to notice the language pattern and notice the words that I use. I said, as I quickly walk you through, and then I said, the top of the waves, we're not going to get into all the details. And that this will give you control. Here's the pen, you have control. See, all of these words and the language patterns that are created by them speaks right to the driver type's primary motivators. That's what they want. Their primary motivator is they want to see results. Now let's take a look. The next personality style is what I call the inspirer type. You know the type. These people love to chit chat. They can easily go off to Pluto if you're not careful, right? You see a picture on their desk and you comment about, I see you went to Vail. Next thing you know, boom, they're telling you all about their vacation, okay? They want to have fun. They want to find solutions to the problem, but their solution, they want every single person involved. And they really care about including the entire team in the process. Now, when you think about people buying on emotion, this style of personality, they do everything from emotion. And when it comes to decision making, they want everybody's buy-in. That's the most important. And once they've got it, once they know that everybody's on the team, they will pull the trigger. When I was selling to this style, I would hand them the scope of work and I'd say, now comes the fun part. We get to create whatever you want to really engage your team and make sure everyone has something that feels like a win to them. So feel free to use this pen and add anything that feels like a perfect match, or you can subtract anything that you don't think is quite right. Fair enough? Again, they would light up. They would lean in. And rather than just kind of thinking something, what they would usually do is blurt right out, right? The driver style's in the head saying, geez, this is great, I'm in control. The inspire personality, nothing goes on inside that doesn't come outside. Oh, this is great. I love your flexibility. It's just what I was hoping for. They'll say those words right out loud. Now, notice the choice of the language patterns. I said, now comes the fun part. The inspire type wants fun. And then I said, we get to create very inclusive. And then I said, we'll make sure that everyone has something that feels like a win. I'm using those feeling words for them. So feel free, feels like a match. Notice how many times I use the word feel or feels in that little response of opening up the proposal. Remember, these folks, these are the feelers. So be sure to connect with them at that level. And notice, this isn't about commonality. What I'm doing is I'm mirroring to them. I'm mirroring them. Commonality is a tactic. Mirroring is a strategy. And everything I teach starts with strategy, and then tactics come in and are layered below that. Okay. Now we've got the driver and we've got the inspirer. So now we have the two more reserved types. So the first is the supportive type. Okay. That's their style. They don't want to blow through the conversation. You've got to, they want to take their time. They appreciate when you slow things down and when you tone things down. You don't want to come in with big energy. What they want is for everyone to be happy and get along. Unlike the driver, the supportive style wants to hear some of the details, and most importantly, how these things impact and affect everybody else on the team, even before their own self-interest. They're going to be attached to how people will feel and how their decision will cause the least amount of turmoil or waves. Now, they don't fear change. They fear the impact of change. They make decisions very methodically. They're not going to rush in like the driver, and they're not going to be kind of, fancy free as the inspire. They're going to be much more methodical. They have a process. And if you break that process, if you ambush that process, if you try to push them too hard, ABC always be closing, they will shut down if they feel that they're being pushed. And they can be very stubborn. There's a bit of a passive aggressiveness because they hate conflict. So rather than being direct with you like the driver will be, these people have a tendency to keep things in limbo. They're the ones that tell you that they're going to get back to you and never do. Because, quite frankly, they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Now, what I would sell to these folks, I would get really centered and I would check my own personality. Because I'm a driver personality. I want to get in, I want to solve problems. So I would have to check my own style. Let me slow down, right? Let me calm down. Let me not come in and rush. Let me not be loud. And then what I would do is I would put a cover letter before any of the details. And I would be sure to let them know that everything in this scope was filtered through the consideration of making sure that everyone's needs were considered. And whenever possible, I adapted the scope to fit the needs of the entire team. And what I would do is I would actually read the cover letter with them. They'd have a copy, I would have it, and say, let me just, would it be okay if I would walk you through this? And then after reading the cover letter, I would say to them, let me give you an example of what I mean by making sure that everything was filtered through the team before we go through the entire scope. So you'll see all the considerations as we look at each of the deliverables. Now, if you'll just go over to page 6, you'll see that I included the option for the fragrance scent for each of the air fresheners to be selected by the team members that were in that work area. So rather than locking you into one fragrance for the entire office, I wanted your team to have the flexibility and freedom to pick the scent that makes most of them comfortable and wouldn't feel overwhelming. Does that make sense? And instantly, I could feel the relief, no conflicts. I don't have to make that decision. Nobody's going to blame me for how the office smells. No one's ever going to be upset or angry at them. And they would say to me, thank you. Thank you for thinking about this. This is really important that I have the entire team's buy-in. So just by being a little bit intentional to show them that I was being intentional. See, I wanted to be intentional, and then I wanted to show them that I was intentional. And I want to be intentional about showing them that I was intentional. By doing that, I build massive rapport and trust with them. Now notice the words in the language pattern that I used. I would use the words like options, team members, flexibility, comfortable. I use the words we and us and them. See, all of these are very strategically used to make the process as inclusive as possible. Okay. So now let's look at the last style. And this style is probably the hardest one to read. Okay. They're actually pretty easy to identify, but they're hard to read because they show next to no emotion, right? They never seem, this style is very analytical in their head. They've never seen a spreadsheet that they didn't fall in love with because they love them. They live by spreadsheets. Like the supportive style, you have to move really slow with them. And you have to tone down your enthusiasm, way down. And now, even lower. These folks want to discuss every single point and every single detail. And they want to have all the data to back it up. And if you bring them, a case study or a peer review, they will love you for it. And they will read it. And they'll read every word of it. See, this is the cautious style. And they're cautious about everything they do, about every decision. And they make decisions very slowly. They will never shoot from the hip. If you think about my style, the driver or the inspirer, right? We make very quick decisions. And our process is more like, shoot, fire, aim. The calculating type, they use a framework of aim, measure, aim again, double check, confirm you're on the target. Is there anything else? Are you sure? Lock it in, fire. Now, the good news is that once one of these calculating styles make a decision, that's it. It's set in stone. And you will never be blindsided by them, being talked out of their decision. I think we've all done deals with the driver type, right? Only to have the deal fall apart because they had lunch with someone who changed their mind. Drivers are typically known for ambushing their team because once the team's made a decision, the last person who speaks into the driver's ear can change everything. And you'll see that a driver will want to pull the plug and change everything on something that they just decided an hour ago. So when I was selling to the calculating style, I would put what's called MSDS. It's a material safety data sheet. We give you basically all the ingredients and all the science behind every chemical. And I would use those sheets and I would put those right at the front. And I would show them right from the beginning every single chemical that we were going to be using in their building. And I'd have the most important data points highlighted for them. Then I'd have 2 pages of references with comments that spoke right to their top area of concern. Next, I'd show them a map of the floor plan of their building, and I'd have color-coded the areas which we were going to clean and at which frequency. Red for daily, yellow for twice a week, green for once a week. The style loves charts. They love data. They love research. Then I'd have an equipment page, a list with pictures from all the manufacturers and all the specs for each piece of equipment that we were going to use, reviews on how the products worked so they could see the type of HEPA vacuum we were going to use and the filter that we were going to use along with it. By the time we got to the scope of work, they trusted that I didn't just kind of blow through this process, that I wasn't just giving them some cookie cutter proposal, that I had taken the time and that I took proving to them what we were going to do was the very best option, that I took that into serious consideration for every single item. Trust me, you can't overdo it with this style. The idiom that, the more the merrier is spot on. And when I would go over a proposal with them, I would use words and language patterns that spoke right to their dominant motivation, getting it right. That's what motivates them. So I would incorporate words like studies show. The data represents this or that. You can be certain that this or that. And then I would say, and then we can measure the outcome. See, words like slowly, carefully, safely, after considering and examining all the options, I determine that. See, any of these types of words and phrases creates instant emotional certainty in their mind. So now you have an understanding of the 4 core personalities. Here's what most people miss about this. Even if they're highly familiar with personality types, every single person, regardless of what the personality is, has both what we call an expressed side. This is how they naturally communicate, as well as a wanted side. This is how they prefer others communicate with them. And they won't usually show or expose their wanted side. So it's kind of like a dance. So the driver and the inspire personalities tend to dance together, right? Because they're both outgoing. So when someone expresses themselves as a driver, they often want to be communicated with like an inspirer. Similarly, when someone's an inspirer in their natural expression, they typically look for driver characteristics in how they want someone else to communicate to them. The same goes for the supportive and the calculating personalities. They dance together on a more introverted side, not nearly as outgoing. So understanding these natural pairings is critical because it helps you maintain rapport throughout the entire sales process. Let's do a deep dive on each of these styles. And I'm not just going to show you how to communicate and interact with them. I'm also going to show you how you can virtually instantaneously identify what their personality style is, just from a few things that they say or just their mannerisms. So once you know this, you can adapt your selling style to connect with them in a very natural way that feels right for them. So this is the ultimate rapport building tool. Now, real quick here, I want to give you something that I believe is going to be really valuable that you can start using today. I created what I call the Prospect Personality Guide. This is a very simple reference guide that breaks down each of these 4 personality styles. This is something that you're going to want to print out and keep on your desk, easily accessible when you're talking to prospects. It contains the essential tells for identifying each personality type, the exact questions to ask, and the specific closing approaches that work for each type. So I want you to pause the video now and download this guide right there by clicking in the link in the description below. I suggest having it open as we continue through this deep dive for each of the personality types, because it's going to help you follow along and retain all the distinctions that we're talking about. So go ahead and pause the video, download it, and I'll see you right back here. Okay, so now you're back. Let's start the driver personality type. And you'll see this guide becomes even a more valuable tool as we layer in each personality style. Now, as I said before, the drivers are the dominant, direct decision leaders. When you're selling to a driver, you need to understand their natural instincts and subconscious patterns. Again, these aren't traits that they're actively thinking about. These are hardwired behaviors that drive and motivate their decision-making process. So a driver personality style is naturally results-oriented. They're highly efficient. They're driven. They're competitive. They see themselves as resourceful. And they are persistent risk takers. But here's what's fascinating. While they express themselves as this driver, their wanted side typically leans towards the inspire characteristics. They may come across as, being all business, but they still want human connection. They just want it on their terms. So let me share something crucial about a driver personality style that most salespeople get wrong. When a driver gives you an objection, most salespeople will try to overcome it with facts and figures. That's a big mistake. They don't want the details. They don't want to see all the data. Instead, what you need to do is you need to match their directness while acknowledging their desire for quick, efficient solutions. So here's what this looks like maybe in practice, okay? Let's say you're selling a software solution to a driver personality style. You wouldn't start with, let me walk you through all the features. Instead, you'd say something like, Jim, I know time is valuable. So let me quickly show you how this solution can increase your team's productivity by 40% in the next 30 days. See, right to it. I'm telling them very quickly. Let me show you how efficient this is going to be, and let me show you the result. That's what they want to hear about. They want to hear about the result. So in gathering intelligence, where you're in that phase of our system of intelligence gathering from a driver personality style, you need to structure your questions strategically. You cannot ask questions like, oh, so, tell me about, how long ago you started. Not going to fly with them. They want to get right down to business. So let me give you the exact questions that work best, starting with the least invasive and then working our way up to maybe more invasive. So the first question is, what are the key goals you're currently focusing on in your business? Results oriented. Like, what are the key goals that you're currently focusing on in your business? Second, what results are you aiming to achieve with our solution? Like, what's the outcome? Give me the big picture. Next, what challenges have you faced with similar products and services in the past? Like, that's specific. I'm not asking you for all, what did you like or didn't like? What are the challenges you faced with similar products and services in the past? And then, how do you prefer to measure success with a new solution? See, notice that each question is focused on results and outcomes. That's what drives and motivates the driver personality style. Now, when you need to ask more invasive questions, here's what works. What's prevented you from achieving your goals with your current solution? What's been the cost of not having the right solution in place? What's the biggest weakness in your current strategy? Who will face the consequences if the decision goes wrong? Again, these questions work because they speak directly to a driver's focus on results and their desire to avoid failure. But here's the key, and it's all in your tonality. Your delivery must match their directness. You can't be kind of timid when you're asking these. You can't ask them in like a reasonable tonality. It's got to be a very intentional tonality. Whenever you're asking the driver personality style, you have to make sure that your tonality is direct. Let me share a real world example. Okay. I was working with a client who was trying to sell high-end consulting services to a CEO with a very strong driver personality style. This is where I actually come along with my client to a meeting, or I'll jump on a live call and I shadow what they do to see how they're applying the system. And if I see that they're doing something wrong that might blow the deal, well, then I step in and I help close the deal, or at least keep it alive so we get another bite at the apple. So this is another one of the things I think that sets our training and my team apart from everyone else in the market. We actually help you close the deals. So my client's there and was taking way too long to get to the point. And they started sharing detailed background information. They wanted to get company history. We were about 4 or 5 minutes in, and I could see just the body language. The CEO was like frustrated. He starts checking his phone. He's shifting in his seat. So I stepped in and said, Jim, let's cut to the chase. You're losing $5,000 monthly in operational inefficiencies. We can fix that in 90 days or less. Would you like to see what we got? And immediately the CEO dropped his phone and engaged. And the reason why was because I matched his direct style while promising a clear result, a very clear next step. And I put him in control. Do you want to see it? It's up to you. That's what driver personalities respond to. They want direct communication focused on outcomes and results. So whenever you're presenting to a driver personality style, remember these key points. Get to the point and get to it quickly. Focus on results, ROI, right? Return on investment, and give them control of the decision. Provide clear, direct answers to their questions. Don't hem and haw. Very clear, very direct answers. And don't waste their time with small talk or unnecessary details. So let me show you exactly how to identify a driver personality within, the first few seconds of an interaction. And this is crucial because you need to be able to adapt your approach immediately. And you don't have time to figure out, halfway through the presentation. Now, these tells, right? These tells, like a gambler, like a poker player has a tell, maybe they scratch their nose when they have a weak hand. These tells will show up in person. They'll show up in text messages. They'll show up in emails. They'll show up over the phone. They'll show up in a Zoom. Okay. So you just have to be aware for them and watch them. So first, let's talk about their immediate communication pattern. When you call a driver personality and you ask, is Jim available, right? Hey, this is Paul. Is Jim there? Right? What you'll typically get is a direct, no nonsense response. This is Jim, or speaking. Right? There's no warm, hey, this is Jim. Yeah, hi, this is Jim. Who's this? No, this is Jim speaking. Right? That's it. There's no warm pleasantries, just direct. So notice, there's no warm up, there's no pleasantries, just direct acknowledgement. So when you're looking at their physical presence, right? If you're in their office, you'll notice several immediate indicators. Driver personalities tend to move with purpose, directiveness, right? They are decisive people. So they maintain strong eye contact throughout an entire conversation. You'll notice their handshake is going to be firm and it's deliberate. In their appearance, they often gravitate towards powerful colors, and usually they're very well kept, right? A professional attire, maintaining kind of a polished image. And their facial expressions are typically controlled and purposeful, showing very little and unnecessary emotion. And their communication style is equally distinctive. You'll hear them speaking in declarative statements rather than questions. And they consistently get straight to the point without any unnecessary elaboration. They're known to interrupt you. So once they've made a decision, or once they've formed an opinion, they're going to use very few words to make their point. And as soon as they've got it, they'll interrupt you. I'm a high D. I'm a high driver. And I tell people, when I start working with people, especially with an S, personality, that supportive style that tends to be more sensitive, I tell them, hey, look, just in advance, I need you to know, I tend to think in Post-it notes. So if you're telling me something and I've got a question in my mind, I'm not going to be able to hear what you're saying until, I get my question answered. So I may interrupt you. And if I do, it's nothing personal. I'm just thinking in Post-it notes. They'll usually laugh. I'll laugh. But it's one way that I can check my personality style, right? So remember, they're going to be direct. They're going to use the fewest amount of words. And when asked a question, they're not going to take time to think about it. That's the calculating style. They're going to respond really decisively. Right? Remember, shoot, fire, aim, right? So they're not going to hesitate, or they're not going to qualify their answers. So if you're in a meeting with them in their office environment, you'll notice several telling characteristics. First off is their space is typically organized and efficient. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not piles of paper, but they know where everything is. And they'll have achievements and awards on the walls, right? And you'll see very few personal items or photos. They may have a picture of their family, but they'll also have, that, they were the number one salesperson or the number one district or some kind of, award from the Chamber of Commerce. They also maintain focus on business and results. So their desk is usually going to be with whatever is the most priority thing for them for that day. That's what's going to be visible. And you'll notice that they position themselves so that they can see the door in the entire room. They're not going to be off to the side. And it's a subtle indication of their desire for control and an awareness that they want to be able to see everything that's coming. And here's something crucial that I've learned from thousands of sales interactions. Driver personalities will often try to take control of the conversation right from the very beginning. Like I said before, they might start asking you questions before you even finish your introduction. This isn't rudeness. It's their natural leadership style coming through. So in a real world example, I was recently on a sales call where within the first 30 seconds, the prospect said, look, I've got 15 minutes. What can you do for my bottom line? That was it. I've got 15 seconds. I got 15 minutes. What can you do for my bottom line? That's a classic driver response telling you exactly what tool you can use in that first minute of the conversation to win their hearts and minds. So ask this simple question. What made you interested in learning more about our solution? What made you interested? See, when a driver personality responds, they'll typically focus entirely on results, saying well, we need to improve our efficiency by 30%. Or, our current system isn't delivering results. Or I want to see if I can solve the problem faster. So notice how their responses are almost always results focused, and they're direct. Now, here's something that most sales trainings miss. Driver personality styles will often mask their directness in a professional setting because they've been coached on being more approachable. But you can still spot their true style by watching these little micro expressions when you're talking about results or timelines or competition. Their energy visibly shifts when you touch on one of these topics. You'll see them. You'll see their eyes focus even more on you. Frown on the brow, right? They might lean in a little bit more. They might lean up. So remember, identifying a driver personality style isn't about checking things off the list for traits. None of that is. What we're talking about here is recognizing energy. Recognizing energy. Recognizing decision-making patterns is one of our first crucial things we want to do right from the beginning of every interaction. And once you've identified them as a driver, you can move into very specific questions and approaches that I shared earlier. So now let's talk about the inspirer personality type. These people, they're influential. People like them. They're inspiring. They're interactive whenever they communicate. Let me tell you something most people miss about the inspirer personality type. While they're the most outgoing, they're gregarious, they're the social types, they're also most likely to say yes to a deal and then ghost you if you don't handle them correctly. See, inspire personality types are very much like the supportive personality type in this way. So they're natural extroverts, right? They want to get out and meet people. They're risk takers. They bring very big energy into the room, but they're also sensitive to energy. So you're gonna find that they're gonna be bright and optimistic. They're always ready for the next exciting thing. But here's the crucial insight: while they express as an inspirer, their wanted side typically leans towards driver characteristics. They want to feel in control of their decisions. Even while they're being social and interactive, even while they're trying to get everybody to join in, they want to be in control. And here's what I've learned from all of my sales interactions with the Inspire personality types. Their greatest weakness in the buying process is also their greatest strength, and that's their enthusiasm. They get excited quickly, but that same excitement can lead them to avoid making final decisions or following through on commitments. So here's what that looks like in real life. An Inspire personality style will often respond to your initial presentation with incredible enthusiasm. They'll say, "Oh, this is amazing. Oh my gosh, I love everything. This is just what we need. Like how soon can we get started?" But if you take that enthusiasm as a done deal, you're making a rookie mistake. And here's why. Inspire personalities love everything. It'd have to be really bad for them not to love it. And they're easily distracted, and they tend to be poor with follow-up. They often run late to appointments. So you need to build structure around their natural sense of enthusiasm. And they're very spontaneous. And you've got to put some boundaries on that. So let me give you the exact questions that work best with the Inspire personalities, starting with the least invasive. So first I would say, what excites you most about trying out a new product or service? What excites you most? What excites you most about trying out a new product or service? Can you share some positive experiences you've had with similar solutions? Who else on your team might be excited about this product or service? Who else on the team might be excited about changing, cleaning companies? How do you usually stay updated with the latest trends in your industry? See, notice how these questions tap into their natural enthusiasm while gathering crucial information. But here's the thing you have to pay attention to. When you need to move to more invasive questions, you need to maintain their energy while pushing for commitment. See, you want to say something like, what's held you back from taking action on implementing new solutions sooner? What's held you back from taking action on implementing new solutions sooner? Who on your team's holding you back from making a decision today? What's the potential downside if you ignore this opportunity? How much longer can you afford to wait before making this change? See, like I said, you need to match their energy level while also being the originator, right? Staying in control and guiding the conversation. In our system, we teach that in every human interaction, in the first 4 seconds, there's an unspoken dynamic that happens. And that is one person allows the other person to take the lead. So one person plays the role of the subjective and allows the other person to take the role as the originator. Now, we have some natural programmed relationships. We have teacher-student, doctor-patient, lawyer-client, right? Boss-employee. These are kind of natural dynamic, parent-child. But when you're working with other people where that boundary isn't socially programmed into our mind, in the first 4 seconds, one person allows the other person to have authority or lead. Now, that doesn't mean they get to keep it. That doesn't mean control over the person. That means that this other person is going to give trust for a period of time to this other person. Now, this originator role could blow it by going off on a tangent, saying something off, that's just dumb or insulting. So you got to remember, when you're working with the Inspire style, you're trying to keep them focused. You're trying to get them to commitment. And they're going to allow you to do that if you've built rapport, if you're in the originator role. So let me share a specific example from my own experience. So I'm working with a client who is selling high-end training programs. The prospect is the Inspire personality style. So they're absolutely loving the presentation. Inspiring personality styles are easy to sell to. I mean, you'd have to really screw it up for them not to play along because they're playful. So they're nodding enthusiastically. They're sharing stories. The problem is that we hadn't even gotten to the core offering. And I could see that the sale was just slipping away. It was just this cloud of friendly conversation. And my client didn't create the boundary for the inspiring personality. And before you know it, what happened was my client, who's selling, was in the originator seat. The prospect was in the supportive role, in the subject. And what happened is those tables started to change. all of a sudden rapport was being broken. There was no authority. These were just like two great friends. And before you know, we weren't talking about meaningful specifics. We were wandering generalities. And so I had to step in. And this is exactly what I said. I said, you know what I love about this program? Again, I'm matching the enthusiasm. I'm using, you know what I love about this program? I'm saying this to the inspiring client, right? The inspiring style client is it's going to give you something exciting to share with everybody on your team every single week. But here's the thing. There's only 3 spots left this quarter. Once they're done, they're gone. And I'd hate to see you miss out. Should we get you locked in now? See that? I was able to introduce scarcity by building rapport, matching and modeling and mirroring the energy. But I had to put in a boundary. I had to get us off from wandering generality back to meaningful specific. I matched their energy, but I directed it toward a decision point. And that's crucial with inspiring personality styles. I'm matching their energy, but I'm leading them to a decision. So whenever you're selling to this type of personality, remember these essential points. One is you have to match their enthusiasm, but you have to maintain control of the conversation. You have to build in specific follow-up mechanisms. You have to create follow-up mechanisms in every single interaction. You have to give them opportunities to share, and you have to give them opportunities to act, and to interact with you. So you've got to let them get a little bit of their story. And so there's a little bit of going to Pluto, but you can't let it go. You can't let it go from them being the subjective to them being the originator and leading the conversation. You have to create urgency around decisions, and you have to provide clear, simple next steps. And don't miss this important point. The inspired personality styles, they need to feel like they're part of something exciting and something successful. They want to win. So when you're closing this style, never just focus on features and benefits. Instead, help them envision how they'll share their success with others, how the whole team will win. Say something like, imagine telling your team about the results you're getting from this 6 months from now. Now, let me show you how the inspire personality can be seen and identified within seconds of your interaction. And this is fascinating because the inspire personalities are often the easiest to identify, but they're also the ones that most salespeople mishandle because they mistake their friendliness and their ability to just love everybody as buying intent. So when you first encounter this inspiring personalities type, you'll notice their immediate energy of expressiveness, big smile. If you make an initial phone call, you can hear their smile. So you may say, is Jim available? The inspire personality, instead of just saying, this is Jim, right? This is Jim. How you doing today? This is Jim. How's it going? They might even launch into a brief story about, what they're doing. Hey, yeah, I'm just, I'm at Whole Foods. I'm at Starbucks. This immediate warmth, this immediate engagement is your very first clue. Now, the physical presence of an inspired personality is unmistakable, right? They tend to move with animation, with energy, using expansive gestures when they speak. Their facial expressions are highly animated. You'll notice always a big, quick smile. You'll notice they maintain friendly eye contact. I often say if there's a streak of blue or pink or yellow or green hair, there you go. If there's a nose ring, a lip ring, if there's 6 earrings, right? If the screen on their cell phone is broken because they've dropped it, because this is the fun, careless style. That's their personality. But unlike a driver, where the personality, intense gaze, the eye contact from an inspire is warm. It's engaging. They're going to dress with flair, right? They're going to choose colors that make a statement or spark conversation. And their communication style is very distinctive. With this style, they speak with enthusiasm and energy. Often their vocal tone and pace, up and down, changing rapidly. They're natural storytellers. And they'll use phrases like, you won't believe what happened, or, let me tell you about this. And they tend to speak quickly. And they might jump between topic to topic. New thoughts kind of just occur to them. And unlike the driver personality, who's like clipped responses, right? Just like bump, bump, very sharp. The inspired personality will elaborate. They'll embellish. They'll give you all the answers and all the personal details and all the anecdotes. Their office environment, there'll be several just telling signs. features of personal photos, mementos, conversational pieces. You might see awards or recognition that highlight their relationships, team awards, the Little League team that they sponsored, customer appreciation plaques, social media achievements. Their office space, typically more casual, welcoming feel compared to kind of the stark efficiency of a driver personality office. And this is really important too. The Inspire personality will often try to build personal connection with you before getting down to business. So they might ask about your weekend. They might comment on something that you're wearing or share a quick story about their morning. This isn't them wasting time. This isn't them beating around the bush. This is their natural way of establishing rapport. So let me share with you a real example. I was on a sales call recently where I asked the standard opening question, what made you interested in learning more about our solution? And while a driver personality would give me results-focused answers, this Inspire personality responded, it's funny you asked that. I was talking to Sarah in accounting. Do you know Sarah? And she was telling me about her brother's company that used to do something similar. And they thought, that we could use, and off to the races. We were off to a story. And this is a classic response. Inspire personality's behavior is that they want to connect the business reason with a personal relationship. And they want to show enthusiasm about possibilities rather than just results. So they'll often sound like they're committing to something when really all they're talking about is their intention to look into something. But they'll talk with committed language. So pay attention to this. You can't assume that all outgoing friendly prospects are the Inspire personalities, because here's the crucial distinction. A true inspiring personality aren't just friendly, they're energetically engaged in creating connection. They don't just want to answer your questions. They want to feel like they're actively engaged, that they're participating in it. So when you're identifying an Inspire personality, watch for their reaction when you match their energy level. A true inspiring personality will respond by becoming even more engaged. They'll lean into the conversation, often physically and metaphorically, when they feel that they're matching enthusiasm from you. So remember, spotting an Inspire personality type isn't just about noticing who's friendly and talkative. It's about recognizing their natural drive to connect, to influence, and to engage with other people. And once you've confirmed that you're dealing with this personality, you can then move into those specific questions and approaches that we discussed earlier, but always maintaining that high energy, relationship focused interaction that they crave. But you got to make sure you are leading them to a decision point. Now, if you haven't downloaded your copy of the Prospect Personality Guide, pause the video right now. Click in the link in the description and get your hands on this valuable reference sheet. Trust me, you will use this over and over and over again on sales calls and in everyday life when you're trying to figure out how to relate to the people around you. I created this just for you so you have a tangible, helpful guide to start communicating and connecting like a pro. So let's move on to the next. This is the supportive personality. Remember, the supportive, the S stands for steady. They're supportive. They're sensitive. Right? They're stable team players. And what's fascinating about the supportive personality is that while they make up a significant portion of your potential buyers, they're often overlooked because they don't demand attention like the drivers and the inspires do. Supportive personalities are naturally nurturing, stable, and loyal. They're the ones who keep teams together. They maintain relationships. They ensure smooth operations. In my company, my assistant, who runs my life, right, is a supportive style. And she is in control. She is large and in charge. She runs the company. But you'd never know it. Never know it. Like a little gray mouse. You don't even notice. But she holds a lot of authority and a lot of weight. And when she gives me her opinion, I listen to it. So oftentimes, salespeople and other people will underestimate this style and won't see them as the true leaders that they are. And what's crucial to understand is while they express this supportive side, their wanted side is typically leaning more towards the calculating characteristics. They want data and information to support their decisions. Even though they lead with their heart, it's their brain, it's their analytical mind that's going to help that heart lead them intuitively. So here's something that often gets confused about supportive personalities. So salespeople will mistake their agreeable nature for agreement with the sale. So a supportive personality will nod, smile, and it seems like everything that you're saying, they've got complete buy-in. But on the inside, they might be completely uncomfortable. They might have a resentment for the pace or the pressure that they feel your presentation's putting on them. And here's what this looks like in practice. A supportive personality style will say things like, I need to think about it. I should probably discuss this with my team. Remember, they're trying to get consensus. Supportive personalities are the ones that want to avoid conflict. They want to avoid conflict. They'd rather agree with you in the moment and ghost you later than directly say no to you. So let me give you the exact questions that work best for the supportive style. And again, we always go from least invasive to most invasive. So here's one. What would make a product feel comfortable and reliable for you? Are there any specific concerns or questions you have about the offering? How important is it for you to feel supported throughout the implementation process? Can you share some past experiences where a product or service has successfully met your needs? See, notice these questions emphasize comfort, support, and past experiences. All those things matter deeply to the supportive personality. Remember, they don't resist change, but they resist being changed, right? So when you need to move to more invasive questions, you need to maintain a supportive tonality. So you still need to get to the truth. You still need to lead in the decisions, but you need to do it in a gentle way. So here's some examples. Are you worried about sticking with your current solution? And how might that be holding you back? Are you worried about sticking with your current solution? And how might that hold you back? How do you feel about team members who might resist this change? What would happen if the current approach fails completely? Who will be most affected if your current system doesn't improve? So here's a real world example that shows how to handle supportive personalities. But again, I want you to notice least invasive, most invasive. If you were to ask that second round of questions first, you would immediately break rapport. They would say yes, 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 and you would never hear from them again. You'd never hear from them. So here's how you want to work with supportive personalities really effectively. So I was working with a client who was struggling to close a deal with a prospect who kept saying, let me think about it. Let me think about it. For 3 months straight, let me think about it. The salesperson was getting frustrated because, quite frankly, the prospect seemed interested, but just wouldn't commit. And I noticed this was classic supportive personality styles. So I advised, let's do this differently. I told him, instead of pushing for a decision, let's send them a detailed implementation timeline showing exactly how we'll support their team through each phase of the change, and make sure to include the specific dates, training sessions, all the check marks along the way. The prospect signed the deal within a week. Why? We addressed their core need: stability, predictability, support, right? A very clear path forward without any pressure. Them feeling in totally control. They could see what was coming weeks and months in advance. So whenever you're selling to a supportive personality, you need to remember these fundamental truths. Remember, they need time to process, right? You can't push them. And they also want to know how the changes are going to affect their team. They value stability. They want predictability. They need clear step-by-step implementation plans. And they appreciate consistent, reliable, and relevant follow-up. Here's what most people miss about supportive personality styles. Supportive personalities usually have tremendous buying authority. Like I mentioned, my office manager, my personal assistant who kind of runs my life. She has a lot of authority because they're often in key operational roles. But they won't use that authority unless they feel completely secure in their decision. So when closing this personality style, never push for an immediate decision. Instead, lay out clear, structured path to the sale. Say something like this: would it be helpful if I outlined the 3 steps we typically take when onboarding new clients to ensure a smooth transition? Here's how I identify a supportive personality whenever I'm in a sales interaction. Remember, that means phone, text, email, Zoom, in person. Because what's fascinating about spotting this personality style is while they're the most common in organizations, they're often the quietest, making them easy to misread if you don't know exactly what to look for. Right? They may be standoffish, and you think that they're not on, they're not on your side, or they're not picking up what you're laying down, and they are. So when you make that first phone call and ask, is Jim available? A supportive personality will typically respond with a gentle, measured tone. Yes, this is Jim speaking. Yes, this is Jim speaking. Notice how different this is from the driver's abrupt response or the inspire's, super happy, greeting. Their voice is often soft. It's welcoming. It's not overly animated. The physical presence of a supportive personality tells you a lot about who they are. They tend to move with careful, measured gestures. They maintain calm and steady demeanor. Their facial expressions are pleasant. They're attentive, but not overly expressive, right? The inspired may have a big smile. The supportive style, less so. So you'll also notice that they make kind of comfortable eye contact, but they might look away if that eye contact is too direct or becomes too intense. And their appearance is usually conservative and appropriate. You're not going to find them flashy. You're not going to find them with pink streaks of their hair or a nose in the ring. They typically dress and blend in. Supportive personalities speak at a measured pace, using warm but reserved tones. They listen more than they talk. And when they do speak, they choose their words carefully. You'll notice they use what I call hedging language. I think, perhaps, maybe, might, right? So you'll notice they frequently use phrases that emphasize agreement also. Like, I understand, that makes sense, I see what you mean. They rarely will interrupt you. They often pause before responding to a question. They'll take time to consider their answer. Their office environment, you'll see very clear indicators of their personality type. Their workspace is typically organized but comfortable, with personal touches that reflect relationships, family photos, team pictures, cards from colleagues. So unlike kind of achievement-focused displays of a driver or the conversational pieces of an inspire, this personality space often showcases their connection to others or their supportive role of team members. So here's something crucial that I've learned from thousands of sales interactions. This style will often try to establish quiet, comfortable rapport before engaging. So they might offer you coffee. They might offer you a tea. They want to make sure that you're comfortable. They want to make sure, where would you like to sit? And then they'll engage in, some gentle small talk. This isn't procrastination. It's their way of creating a safe, comfortable environment for discussion. I used to lead really big workshops. I'm talking 4,000 people, and we'd have 10 people at a table. And as far as I could see, this is the World Marriott Resort in Orlando. I used to take the hotel twice a year, every room in the hotel. We had all the meeting space. This is when I was president of the John Maxwell team, partners with John Maxwell, the leadership expert. And we'd have 10 people at the table. And we would be doing exercises, and I and my team would walk the room and kind of watch, how each table was doing the exercise. I could always spot the S, because the person who was supportive was always making sure that everybody else had tissues or the candy or the water. If they got up to go to one of the water stations, you always see the supportive person coming back with 5 waters because they were getting water for everybody else. And then they would realize they didn't get one for themselves. Then they'd go back and get it. Okay. I'll share a real example that I recently had with a personality style that was this supportive style. And here's an opening question. What made you interested in learning more about our solution? And their response made perfect sense as a supportive role. Well, our team has been discussing some challenges we're facing, and we wanted to explore options that would work for everyone. That's how they filtered the decision to talk to me about implementing a solution. Notice they emphasized the team's involvement. It was a collective decision-making process. This is classic supportive personality indicators. So make sure that you don't miss this important distinction about a supportive personality style. They're often mistaken for being indecisive or weak, when in reality, they're carefully processing information and considering its impact on everyone involved. I can tell you, I've been in meetings and my assistant is with me, and when we get out and I ask her if she has an opinion, boy, to me, boom, 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 boom. And she knows She knows that what she's saying has weight and influence over my decision making. So in the meeting, people may have thought, oh, she was just there to take notes. And they may have overlooked her. They may have underestimated her. And that was a classic mistake. So you'll also notice that when they're making decisions, when they're giving answers, there may be a hesitation. That's not about a lack of engagement. It's not about a lack of certainly intelligence. It's not about a lack of interest. It's about them wanting to be thorough and considerate. First, they want to make sure that they get it right. And secondly, they want to make sure that they say it right so they don't hurt your feelings. So watch carefully for their reaction when you present new information or suggest changes. This personality will often display subtle signs of discomfort with rapid change or with like aggressive timelines. You might notice them slightly kind of withdrawing. They become quieter. Or they may say things like, we'll need to think about, how this affects everyone. One of the most reliable ways to confirm that you're dealing with a supportive personality is to intentionally speed up your presentation pace or put a little bit of pressure on slightly. And you'll notice that the supportive personality will become visibly more uncomfortable. And while other types might become more engaged, like the inspirer will, or confrontational like a driver, or analytical like a calculating personality, which we'll go into next, the supportive personality isn't about looking for someone who's, just quiet or agreeable. It's about recognizing this pattern of steady, supportive, team-oriented behavior. And you'll see them get uncomfortable if you're going to push them. So once you've confirmed that you're dealing with a supportive personality, you can adjust your approach, slow things down, match your energy, and understand their need for stability, security, to be careful, and to have consideration, right? So now let's talk about the calculating personality, the last one. And this is interesting because in the sales process, this is probably the most challenging to close. Not because they don't want to buy, but because they need to be absolutely certain that they're making the right decision. So they have to have a level 10 emotional certainty, but they also have to have level 10 logical certainty. The calculating personalities are naturally analytical, right? They're analytical. They're controlled. They're systematic in their approach. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, right? These are the type. This is architects. This style personality tend to go into those professions, or those professions tend to attract these personality styles. They're the ones who will read every single detail of your proposal. They'll, if you give them a list of, if they ask for references, you can bet they're calling them, right? So you better come prepared. You better come prepared and with specific and detailed questions. But here's what's fascinating. While they express as calculating, their wanted side typically leans towards the supportive characteristics. They want reassurance and stability, even while they're analyzing every single detail. And here's what, again, I think most people completely miss. Calculating personality types, they try to rush them. They try to push them too fast through the decision-making process, or they'll overwhelm them with their big energy. You'll see an inspiring salesperson go in and, hey, how's it going today? Great to see you. Wow, beautiful. Whoa, way too big energy. Instant turnoff, instant break of rapport. This is exactly the wrong approach. A calculating personality will shut down if they feel pressured, or if they feel a sense that you're not being precise with your information. And here's what typical calculating personality's response will look like during a presentation. They'll ask things like, can you provide more specific data on that? What's the exact process for implementation? And how did you calculate these numbers? These aren't objections. These are opportunities for you to build massive credibility through precision and detail. Remember, calculating personalities are the most detail-oriented of all the types. They need to understand every aspect before making a decision. Let me give you the exact questions that work best with calculating personalities, starting with the least invasive to the most invasive. So you might start, how do you typically evaluate the effectiveness of new solutions? What particular metrics or standards do you use to assess quality? Could you describe your decision-making process when considering new products or services? So notice again, these are least invasive questions, right? Meaning that they don't feel pressured. They're not on the spot. But notice that these questions emphasize precision, process, specific metrics, all things that matter deeply to a calculating personality. So when you need to move to more invasive questions, you need to maintain the same precision while pushing for clarity. So you can ask questions like, what exact figures are you missing that make you hesitant? Like what exact figures, what exact information are you missing that's making you hesitant or uncertain? How do you justify the risk of not switching to a more efficient solution? That's a pretty invasive question. How do you justify the risk of not switching to a more efficient solution? Again, you can ask that question if you have massive rapport and if you say it in the right tonality. What's the quantifiable cost of continuing without upgrading your current solution? Who will be responsible if the current solution doesn't meet the required standards? All of these are more invasive. Let me share an example. When I was working with a client who was really close to a deal with a CFO, and again, this is a chief financial officer, so classic calculating personality style. So the salesperson had already given 3 presentations, but the CFO kept asking for more information, more information. Again, that's part of the deal. So other personality types may have seen this as stalling, right? People see this as stalling, but me, I recognize this as a typical behavior of this personality style. So instead of trying to push for a close, we created a detailed analysis comparing our solution with their current system, including specific metrics, ROI calculations, and implementation timelines. We also included case studies with exact figures from similar companies to theirs. All music to their ears. CFO signed the deal within a week. That's exactly what I needed to see. That's exactly what I needed to see. See, when you're selling to a calculating personality, you have to remember these essential truths. They need comprehensive data to make decisions. They have to have it. They value accuracy over speed, right? They want to measure twice, cut once. They want to understand the process completely. And they appreciate your attention to detail. And they need logical, well-documented proposals. Now catch this. Most salespeople won't understand this about calculating styles. Like the supportive, they often have significant buying power in organizations because they're frequently analytical. They're the ones dealing with the money. They're in financial leadership roles, but they won't use that authority unless they can justify the decision with solid data. So when closing a calculating personality, never use pressure tactics or emotional appeals. Provide clear, detailed information that supports their decision-making process. Say something like, I've prepared a comprehensive analysis comparing our solution with your current solution, including specific ROI calculations and implementation timelines. Would you like to review those together? Would you like to go over these together? I have used that line, that exact language pattern. I can't tell you how many times. It almost always settles the deal. Now, I have to have all the information. I have to have all those details, which means I've got to do my work on the front end, and you do too. Now, here are some really easy ways to identify this personality when you're in sales. And what's fascinating about the personality is that they often reveal themselves just through their questions rather than their statements. And when you know this, and when you can listen for it, it gives you an immediate advantage. When you make that first phone call and you ask, is Jim available? A calculating personality will typically respond with precise formality. This is Jim Smith. This is Jim Smith speaking. How may I help you? Right? Notice the completeness of their response. They're likely to use their full name and their proper business etiquette all the way through. So this attention to protocol is your first clue. The physical presence of a calculating personality is distinctively professional. It's very controlled, right? It's very conservative. They tend to move with precision, no wasted gestures or unnecessary movement. And their facial expressions are reserved. They're thoughtful. You'll notice that they maintain professional eye contact that's neither intimidating like a driver or warm like an inspirer. Their appearance is typically impeccable, right? With attention to detail in how they dress. Not necessarily focused on like power colors like a driver, but rather on correctness, proprietary, right? They're going to be sharp. Their communication styles, perhaps their most telling characteristics. Calculating personalities speak with precision. They choose their words carefully, and they often pause before responding to ensure that they're accurate. You'll see them look up to the right or their left, gathering information before they speak. They frequently will ask clarifying questions and will often restate information. So you'll tell them something and they'll restate it because they want to confirm that they understand. So they'll say things like, so if I understand correctly, you're saying blah, blah, blah. While you're talking, they'll take notes during the conversation and they'll refer back to those during the discussions. And they'll often be right. When they say, well, I remember during the meeting you said this, they're probably right. Their office environment is really clear. Their workspace is usually meticulously organized. Everything in its proper place. Unlike achievements all over the walls of a driver or relationship-focused displays of a supportive style, this style often features professional certifications, right? You'll see their diploma, technical references, all carefully organized. Their desktop typically has spreadsheets open, right? And they might keep a very detailed calendar, still a paper calendar. And here's what I've learned from thousands of sales conversations. This personality will often try to take control of a conversation through questions rather than statements. So while the driver might directly take control, a calculating style will guide the conversation through a series of precise, detailed inquiries. This isn't skepticism. They're not questioning your authority. This is their way of gathering data that they need to feel confident, that they need to have certainty. So I'll give you an example. When I asked a calculating personality, my standard opening questions is, what made you interested in learning more about our solution? Their response is telling. What they said was, I've analyzed our current system's performance metrics over the past 3 quarters and identified several specific inefficiencies. And I'm particularly interested in understanding how your solution algorithms handle data processing, right? It's all data-based. Notice that it's all focused on specific details, comparative analysis, classic calculating personality indicators. They didn't just, say they were having a problem. They wanted to measure the problem. They wanted to quantify the problems. So make sure that you don't miss this about that personality style, because they're often mistaken for being difficult or oppositional because they're detailed. Their questions in reality are just them being thorough. So it might feel like skepticism or they're doubting you, but it's their way of doing due diligence. And if you can win them over, you've won them for life. Now, you want to watch carefully for their reaction when you present information without specific data or when you make general claims. A calculating personality will often display subtle signs of discomfort with vague statements or unsubstantiated claims. So you might notice them, stating those details back to you. And they say, can you provide some examples of this? Or what's the source of that data? So one of the most reliable ways that you can confirm that you're dealing with this style is to intentionally make a slightly general statement about results or benefits. If you do that, a calculating personality will almost always ask for clarification or specific metrics or some other type of way of proving what you just said. Remember, identifying a calculating personality isn't about spotting someone who's detail-oriented. It's about recognizing their pattern of analytical preciseness. It's a methodical behavior, okay? That's what you're looking for. Because I'm detail-oriented, but I'm not going to get deep into the weeds of the systems and the processes. A calculating personality will. And once you've confirmed that you're dealing with a calculating personality, you can adjust your approach to match their need for accurate information, detailed analysis, and logical progression. So let me wrap this up by showing you how to put all of these personalities kind of together into an immediate action. What makes this system so powerful is that it's not theory. It's a practical framework that you can use for your very next sales conversation. Remember, every person you encounter will predominantly express themselves through one of these 4 personality types. Understanding how to identify and then match to each type can literally double or triple your closing ratio. I've seen this happen countless of times with my own clients. Now, keep in mind, while everyone has a primary personality style, they may shift their style in different situations or roles. That's why your ability to quickly identify and adapt to their current expression is so vital. It's not about putting people into boxes. It's about meeting them where they are in this moment. Think about it this way. If they're direct, decisive, and results focused, you're dealing with a driver. Match their pace and focus on outcomes. If they're enthusiastic and friendly and story-oriented, you're working with an inspirer. Match their energy while guiding the conversation forward to a specific decision point. If they're steady and they're patient and they're relationship focused and they want to slow things down, you've got a supportive style. So slow down and build trust gradually. If they're analytical, if they're detail oriented, if they're precise, you're talking to a calculating personality. Lead with data and be exact in your communication. But here's what's most important. This isn't about manipulation or trying to be someone you're not. It's about serving your prospects at the highest level by communicating in a way that makes them most comfortable. When you do this correctly, you're actually making it easier for them to make the right decision for their needs. So make sure, before you head into your next sales conversation, that you've downloaded the Prospect Personality Guide. Listen, I've spent decades refining these personality-based selling techniques, and I've distilled the most crucial elements into this 2-page reference guide. This isn't theory. It's a practical tool that can immensely impact your sales results. Think about your next sales conversation. Wouldn't it be powerful to instantly identify your prospect's personality type and know exactly how to approach them? See, that's exactly what this guide will give you. It's like having me right there with you, whispering in your ear exactly what to say and how to act with each personality type. The link is in the description below. Download it, keep it handy, and watch how quickly you adapt and connect. And I promise you, you will close the different personality types in a much more efficient way. This is the same guide that I share with my private clients, and it's available to you at no cost. Remember, every sale you make or every sale that you lose is largely determined in those first few moments of an interaction, in those first 4 seconds. This guide ensures that you make those moments count. Download it now and let me know in the comments how it works for you. Okay, now that you got this guide, here's what I want you to do. Click in the description below to watch my next YouTube video. It's called 48 Minutes of Sales Training that will explode your sales in 2025. In this training, I'm going to show you something that most sales professionals completely miss and never discover their entire careers. What you'll learn is the fundamental difference between salespeople who consistently close big deals and those who struggle to hit their numbers every single month. And I reveal the hidden mental framework that top performers use, often without even realizing it. Again, unconscious competency. And I'm going to show you exactly how to implement it into your own sales process. Now, this isn't another video of tips and tricks. This is about transforming how you approach every sales conversation. The link is right below in this video. Click it now and let me show you why your current level of awareness might be the only thing that's holding you back from sales success. I'll see you in the next video.